Hey, what would you think if you knew your doc had a side hustle? You know, an outside job? Think that'd be a good idea?
Welcome to Lean to the Left, home of no holds barred commentary, plus interviews with fascinating people. Some of them top experts, others simply with interesting stories to tell. You'll never know who'll show up at Lean to the Left, the podcast from notfakenews.biz. Now here's your host, Bob Dragon.
Hey guys, welcome to Lean to the Left. Today we're with Dr. Don Shufeldt, an emergency physician, who will discuss how, in a time when physician burnout is such a big problem, having a side gig can be a good thing for doctors. Dr. Shufeldt is author of Entrepreneur RX, the physician's guide to starting a business. So he's encouraging his fellow doc to start a side gig. I want to know how that would in any way benefit a doctor's patients. After all, docs are supposed to be dedicated to helping people heal. How can they do that if they're worried about their side gig's bottom line or some deadline while they're doing brain surgery, for example? So Dr. Shufeldt, I'm sure you're going to set us straight on all of that. Welcome to Lean to the Left.
How are you? Thanks for having me on, Bob. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, so tell me, am I going from the wrong perspective here about doctors having a side thing going on in their lives?
Well, you've come in from the left, certainly.
Well, that's what I do.
I was to say, but I think on this one it's worth leaning to the right, and here's why.
Okay.
A lot of the physicians see firsthand what the challenges are in the U.S. healthcare system, and for the vast majority of us, all want to do things we can improve the quality and efficiency and outcomes for our patients. I mean, that's why we're in the first place.
Sure.
And so, seeing it from the inside, I have neurosurgeon friends who are building devices to make brain surgery better. You reference that. I have orthopedic friends who are building devices to do more minimally invasive hand surgery. And the list just goes on because seeing it from the inside, you see where the cracks in the system are, and then you see ways, wow, this could improve it. Mm-hmm. And so I've done this a few times in healthcare, where I started the urgent cares back in the very early 90s before there were any urgent cares, and started telemedicine in 2010, really before there was much telemedicine out there, is a way to improve care, increase price transparency, and improve efficiency. So I think you can go both ways is the short answer.
Yeah, well, I understand. Okay. So why do you say that being an entrepreneur has made you a better physician?
Well, one, I think it's taught me perspective. And, this last couple of years with COVID has been really difficult for a lot of physicians and a lot of emergency physicians and a lot of critical care docs. I was talking to a friend of mine who was a critical care doc when I was working last weekend, and he just kind of came down. This guy's a total rock star. He just came down and just, literally his head is on his hands. And I go, bad up there. He goes, it's awful. It's just, just full of unvaccinated, very sick and dying COVID people. And it's incredibly burning out, or the folks are getting incredibly burnt out by this. And I think having a sideline or a side gig, whatever you want to call it, or another way to help people outside of, direct hands-on patient care. I mean, I know for me, it's prolonged my longevity in the urgent care world, because it gives me a different pathway where I still feel like I'm helping society and helping patients, but I don't have to be in the trenches day in and day out like I was for years.
Yeah, well, that's easy to understand, actually. So what is your side gig that you do?
Well, I have a couple of different ones. So I'm an attorney as well. So I do, I practice law and I help physicians on legal challenges. I also own a number of businesses. We staff tribal facilities around the country with nurses, doctors, and PAs and MPs. I have a venture capital business that's just starting where we fund mainly physician entrepreneurs, but people doing health tech. And then I write books and I do a lot of speaking.
When do you sleep?
I actually sleep more than I have in a long time. I read this book called Why We Sleep,
Yeah,
which was literally eye-opening, no pun intended. And being a physician, you would think I'd already know this stuff, and sadly I didn't. But the book really drove home the importance of sleep, and now I sleep about 7 hours a night.
Well, that's great. I wish I could do that.
Yeah, there you go.
Patients might say they prefer their doctors focus on caring for them than worrying about some side gig. Why are they wrong? I think you kind of answered that, but you want to elaborate on that just a little bit more?
Well, like I said, I think for a lot of physicians, it keeps them in the game longer because they're not totally focused. I always tell medical students and pre-med kids, medicine really is a calling and a true profession. If you think of it as a job, you're gonna hate it. You have to be, I always say, you have to be willing to cut off your arm to do it, and that's the way I felt, a zillion years ago, and that's the way I still feel because I love practicing medicine. But I think part of the reason why I still love it and I'm working the next 3 days in the emergency department, the reason I'm looking forward to it after all these years is because I don't have to do it every day, day in and day out. It was still, I'm down to 8 or 10 shifts a month because I can do other things. My friends who are doing 14, 20 shifts a month, they're getting to the point, particularly with COVID, that they're getting pretty worn out. And, going back to your last question, it's really disheartening to see these folks. We just had somebody just in the emergency department the other day. The grandfather was intubated from COVID, unvaccinated. The grandmother was getting intubated, unvaccinated. Both kids were unvaccinated, and the son says to the physician who's going to intubate his mother, who likely won't live, said, "Well, can you give her the vaccine?" And this was, no, the vaccine would have been good 3 weeks ago. Now the vaccine's not going to help. I mean, it's too late for the vaccine right now. There's other things we can give her. We can give her monoclonal antibodies. And actually, we couldn't give her that either. But it's too late for the vaccine. And it's frustrating to know there's an easy fix out there.
Right.
And despite there being an easy fix, people don't take it. And then most of them want it when it's way too late. And even the ones that survive have these long-term complications of lung disease and heart disease and brain issues. So it's disheartening to think we can be fixing this and we don't.
Well, that is just incredible. And you guys have to deal with that every day. I mean, the folks that work in these hospitals, in these facilities, that's just got to be tough. What are some of the traits that physicians and entrepreneurs have in common, and how do they improve patient care?
That's a great question, Bob. I think as I look at physicians and entrepreneurs, they do share a lot of the same traits. One, most physicians are very resilient. I mean, you have to be resilient and you have to have some grit because, college is, you've got to get great grades in college. You've got to get a great score on the MCAT. That takes a lot of grit, a lot of resilience when all your friends are out having fun and you're in the library or in your room, reading and studying.
Right.
Medical school is definitely a grind. Intellectually, it's not that hard, but the amount of information is totally a grind. You've got to have some grit and resilience, and you've got to be able to think creatively. And for a lot of medical professions, emergency medicine being one of them, you have to be able to make decisions quickly with imperfect information. And all those traits are traits of an entrepreneur as well. You've got to be able to make decisions. You've got to have grit and determination. You won't always have perfect information. And despite that, you've got to make a decision that, your company can live and die on. Mm-hmm. And so I do think many physicians, even if they don't really know much about business, are really kind of set up to be entrepreneurs.
Where are you? Where do you live? Where do you practice?
Scottsdale.
Where? I'm sorry?
Phoenix, Arizona, Scottsdale.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add, Dr. Shufeldt?
I think that, I always tell people this, I've made every mistake in the book, had more failures than I care to admit some days. But some of them have turned out to be okay. And for every failure that I've had, it has always turned out better. And so I've always been able to look back and say, God, thank God I failed on that one, because had I not failed, then this wouldn't have happened and this outcome wouldn't have happened. So I would say failures are part of the game. They're part of life. They're part of entrepreneurism for sure. And if you can get your head around that failures aren't bad, they're just a step towards victory or a step towards success, boy, life's a lot easier, and certainly entrepreneurism is a lot easier.
Well, with that, I thank you very much for joining us on our podcast, Dr. Shufeldt. It's been an interesting conversation.
Thanks, Bob. I appreciate it.
Now we'll take a quick break, and I'll be right back. Hey guys, thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed this podcast and you'll come back on a regular basis. We provide narrations of commentary published almost daily on notfakenews.biz. But every Monday and sometimes on Thursdays, we're streaming newsmaker interviews, and we're going beyond the world of politics for many of them, presenting guests and topics that I hope you find interesting and enlightening, like this one with Dr. Shufeldt. In fact, if you check notfakenews.biz right now, you can find video of Dr. Shufeldt discussing in more detail the tragedy of the unvaccinated who end up in the emergency room, dying on ventilators with their relatives asking for the vaccine. Check out notfakenews.biz too, where you'll find new material just about every day by some excellent writers with perspectives on a whole range of topics. You can sign up as a member at notfakenews.biz. And of course, it's all free. Also, let your friends know about the Lean to the Left podcast and take a minute to subscribe yourself. Just go to podcast.notfakenews.biz to subscribe, check out the upcoming interview schedule, and listen to all of our episodes. You can also support this podcast by clicking on the Donate tab at the top of the page. Remember, our goal is to be informative and entertaining as we comment on the latest developments in the news. You guessed it, with just a little lean to the left. Now this is Bob Gaddy signing off for Lean to the Left and notfakenews.biz.